Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. On today's show, the Czech Republic National Bank advances Bitcoin study for possible reserves. Also, Norway boosts Bitcoin exposure via MicroStrategy stock. And our feature story of the day, Rich Dad, Poor Dad author says he's dumping gold and silver for Bitcoin. He unveils massive BTC price target. All this and so much more on today's show. Welcome, folks, to Crypto News Global. I'm your host, Nick Toka. Today is January 30th, 2025, and Bitcoin is pumping. Everything's up in the green. It's been quite a good day across the board for all crypto, including the alts, including the big guys. In today's show, we're going to talk about the Czech National Bank advances Bitcoin study for possible reserves, just like the U.S. did. Norway, instead of buying Bitcoin directly, they have exposed themselves via MicroStrategy stock. And Rich Dad Robert Kiyosaki says he's dumping his gold and silver for Bitcoin. He's been saving gold and silver since, I think, the 60s. That would be 1960s, guys. And let's see what he has to say. Very interesting. Of course, we're going to go through our market watch and Bitcoin technical analysis. So let's get right into it. Bitcoin and everything is a greenie today. Bitcoin right now at 104,716, up 0.5% in the 24 hours, but really it was kind of late yesterday that it really started to pump. Ethereum up 4.5% to 32.75. XRP up not much at $3.10. Solana up 1% at $237. Doge up 0.25% to 0.75. A 0.25% to 33 cents. Sui up 10%. XLM up 6.5%. SHIB up a modest 1.5%. Let's check our crypto bulls for the day. And the big winner today is Jasmy, who was slowly diminishing and fell off the face of the earth. That is largely considered Japan's Bitcoin. But definitely a pump today. I didn't look at the news to see what might have come out of Japan, but whatever it was, Jasmy liked it at 33% up for the day. AR up 26%. DEX 23%. Fartcoin again up 17%. Sui up 10%. Let's zoom out to the weekly. We see XCN up 35%, OM up 55%, Jasmy up those gains 26%. That's really all from today. Trump coin down 19%, Bonk down, Fartcoin down. And if we zoom out to the month, we see XCN had a great month despite what's happening this week. We'll see if it turns itself around again. XRP up 50% for the month. Ray up 55%. XDC 57%. Jupe 30%. XLM, big month, 25%. Let's check our crypto market cap, and we have a Bitcoin currently at $2.077 trillion. Ethereum at 395 billion, XRP at 179 billion, unchanged. Solana 115, down a bit from yesterday. Doge at $49 billion. Cardano at 33.5 bill. And Tron to wrap up the top 10 at $22 billion. And let's check out the entire industry right now. The total market cap is at $3.51 trillion, with Bitcoin at 59.25% of the total dominance. Ethereum at 11.25%. It's up a tiny bit. XRP holding steady 5.12%, and also Solana holding steady at 3.3%. Crypto Fear and Greed Index. Today we are at a 76. Yesterday was a 70 in greed, and last week a 75 in greed. And we have approximately 1,126 days until the next Bitcoin halving, with 168,421 blocks to mine until the next halving, and until the year 2140, where the final block reward is mined. We have 1,182,566 Bitcoin left to mine. Our total asset worldwide watch here, we have gold up. It was sitting at 18.5 trillion for weeks, and we see today a bit of a price jump, and it's up over 19 trillion. I've never seen it over 19 trillion before. Apple at 3.5 trillion, Microsoft at 3 trillion in the third position, Nvidia at 3 trillion. So Microsoft has pulled back a bit, 6% today. So these two companies have the most to lose with the DeepSeek AI. So I heard now there's a lot of news going around. OpenAI is now talking about how DeepSeek stole their AI model. Regardless, Nvidia doesn't care. Nvidia was saying up 0.5%, but this chart, I'm not sure where they're getting that from. I guess it was for the whole day. And Microsoft tanking down 6%. And let's get into number 5. Google 2.46%. Amazon 2.467. So we've got Google at 2.468 trillion and Amazon at 2.467 trillion. So we might see these two flip tomorrow as well. Google up almost 3% for the day. Amazon down 1% for the day. So these two are neck and neck. And then we have Microsoft and Nvidia also neck and neck. Apple's pulled way, 0.5 trillion ahead of both of them. And then we've got Bitcoin at the number 7 position at 2.075 trillion today. Silver 1.8 trillion. Saudi Aramco at 1.879 trillion. Meta 1.73, and Tesla at 1.284 trillion to wrap up the top 11. And currently you can get 951 Satoshis for one fiat paper US dollar. And the current US national debt is sitting at 36,418,358,000,000 and change, and that equals to 107,060 per US citizen, and equating to 323,046 per debt taxpayer in the US. Again, the debt clock continues to climb. The Bitcoin also continuing to climb. Lots of proceedings. The big news, terrible news yesterday out of Washington, where a charter plane holding 60 people was hit by a Army helicopter doing training. And no survivors. They basically fell into the frigid waters of the river there, and that was it. So best wishes for everybody's family there. Sadly, no survivors, and just crazy. Apparently, the first real aviation accident, or major aviation accident, in over 15 years in the States. And yeah, it's a bit surprising with all the technology, but They say that is one of the busiest airports in all of good old America. So, yeah, a bit sad out of there. Meanwhile, Trump keeps on rolling, and Bitcoin keeps on chugging along too, which brings us to our stories of the day. We have the Czech Republic, which we talked about yesterday. They were going to pose a bill to put Bitcoin, I think it was $30 billion or something along those lines into Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. And the vote was supposed to happen today. So now we see the headline for today: Czech National Bank advances Bitcoin study for possible reserves. So they didn't say yes or no. They said, just like the U.S., we need to do an investigation and see, if this is good for our economy. The likelihood of a European Central Bank holding Bitcoin reserves has increased despite European Central Bank's President Christine Lagarde's Christine Lagarde recent comments dismissing the asset as unsuitable. The Czech National Bank has approved a study to assess how Bitcoin might serve as a reserve asset following a proposal from the GNB Governor Alain Michel. Previously, Michel argued that the bank should diversify its investment portfolio and consider allocating funds to alternative assets classes, including Bitcoin. His proposal suggested allocating of the CNB's 140 billion euros in reserves to Bitcoin, which is they're almost on par right now, the US dollar and the euro. So it equals to 145 billion in reserves, 140 billion euros, 145 billion US dollars. Based on the result of the analysis, the bank board will then decide on how to proceed further, the CNB stated in January 30th announcement after approving Michel's study. While Michel's idea gained traction within the CNB, Europeans' top banking officials remain unconvinced. Coinciding with the CNB's decision, ECB President Christine Lagarde stated that she is confident that no EU central bank will adopt Bitcoin as a reserve asset. So what we're seeing here is this leftist, ECB President Christine Lagarde is basically going to put everybody behind, and the Czech Republic is going to end up taking the lead, and then she's going to say, they are going to put Bitcoin as their reserve asset. Notably, while the Czech Republic is an EU member, it does not use the euro as its official currency. Well, there's a bonus. The concept of national institutional Bitcoin reserves is gaining momentum both within Europe and beyond. In the U.S., President Trump and several senators have worked on legislation aiming at establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. U.S. states also joined the race as nearly a dozen jurisdictions introduced laws to buy Bitcoin with taxpayer dollars. See, these guys are doing the smart thing. These countries are the ones that are going to get ahead. We've seen El Salvador go from a place that no one would ever visit to the new Bitcoin country with a bunch of whales and multimillionaires moving down there and rebuilding. The crime is gone. They adopted Bitcoin. They threw all the criminals in jail. They adopted Bitcoin as a actual currency, not a reserve, but an actual currency. This was a few years back. And the place is booming. Moving on to our next story of the day. Back to Europe, Norway boosts Bitcoin exposure via MicroStrategy stock. So it's interesting how this Levine lady would surely say that exposure via MicroStrategy stock is fine because it's a traditional security a stock, oh, sure, you can put, of course you want to put your money in US stocks, right? But when you talk about Bitcoin, they get all flustered. And, there's a great saying from one of my favorite movies, Batman Begins. People are always afraid of something they don't know about. Then when it becomes known, this is my edition, when they start to know about it, then they're not afraid anymore. So here we are, this Levine, no Bitcoin, no European country is going to put a Bitcoin reserve, but yet, oh, congratulations, Norway, you boosted your Bitcoin exposure via MicroStrategy. So certainly they didn't say the word Bitcoin, I'm sure, when they bought it. They just said, we bought MicroStrategy stock. It is the best performer on the NASDAQ. The S&P. I believe it did make its way onto the NASDAQ 100 recently as well, or it's going to be the MicroStrategy stock. Norway's central bank holds over 500 million in indirect Bitcoin exposure through investments in MicroStrategy and other cryptocurrency-focused companies. According to the K33 research, Norway's indirect exposure to Bitcoin has nearly tripled over the past 12 months due to increased allocations in crypto-related firms. Right. And then, people who aren't allocating anything into Bitcoins tripled. So these guys tripled in a year. And then, they're recommending keeping your money in bonds for a hefty 4% return would be what the state is recommending you do. Little Lund, K33, head of research at K33, wrote that Norway's sovereign wealth fund holds 0.72% of MicroStrategy's total shares. So they almost own 1% of MicroStrategy's shares altogether, valued at approximately $540 million as of December 2024. This investment translates to indirect exposure of around 3,214 Bitcoin. While Norway's central bank has invested in MicroStrategy since 2009, the trend accelerated last year as the company cemented its position as the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, according to Lund. MicroStrategy remains Norway's sovereign fund's largest cryptocurrency-linked investment. The fund is overseen by the central bank and managed by Norges Bank Investment Management. See, the fund is overseen by the central bank, so nobody's yelling boo ha ha about buying a stock, but they're crying when you mention the word Bitcoin. In addition to MicroStrategy's Norges Bank Investment Management also holds shares in other companies with Bitcoin exposure. These include Tesla, Bitcoin mining firms like Marathon Digital and Riot Platforms, cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, and Tokyo-based Metaplanet. Together, these investments represent over 61 million in indirect Bitcoin exposure. Lund noted that Norges Bank Investment Management's strategy likely follows rule-based sector weighting rather than a direct Bitcoin acquisition plan. So just what I was saying, they have to follow the rules. They're not going to let them have a Bitcoin reserve. So they're, okay, well, we'll get around that by putting a fair amount of exposure into MicroStrategy and other Bitcoin-backed or Bitcoin-heavy companies. So 2024 growth, 115%, June 2024 to end of year. So, this is much more than 153%. This is 2024 growth, but this is just for the year. They're talking about tripling. So if you look at from this point, 2022, they had an exposure 286 Bitcoins, and now they're up to 3821 Bitcoins, equaling, a hell of a lot of money here, $61 million. So good on them. However, Lund also pointed out that the unusual nature of some of Norge's bank investment management investments choices, suggesting that Bitcoin is increasingly finding its way into institutional portfolios worldwide. Norway's interest in companies with significant Bitcoin holdings gained attention last year. In August, documents revealed that the central banks in Norway and Switzerland made substantial investments in MicroStrategy shares, coinciding with increased Bitcoin purchases by the Tysons Corner-based firm. So it's not just Norway. We already knew about Switzerland, and in Lugano, Switzerland is where they put up that now famous statue of the representation of Satoshi Nakamoto, and they also are allowing people to pay their taxes with Bitcoin in Lugano. And this is one of the things that begins to make a speculative currency into an actual currency that people will hold and use as money. Traditionally, this is how it started, with allowing you to pay your taxes with it. So Switzerland is ahead of the game, and as we know, Switzerland is a pretty smart country. They have a lot of banks, and they have a lot of gold, and they have, I originally took some courses in international business way back in the day in trade, and Switzerland's main GDP is based on money. So, and it's been like that for many, many years. So I think they know what they're doing, and again, they're ahead of the curve. Norway also a pretty forward-thinking country. So I'm happy with both of these guys. Moving on to our story of the day. I'm loving this one. Rich Dad, Poor Dad author says he's dumping gold and silver for Bitcoin, and he unveils a massive Bitcoin price target. And he's got a wicked ass, obviously AI generated image. So let's check this out, folks. Best-selling author Robert Kiyosaki is changing his investment strategy in favor of Bitcoin. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad author tells 3.5 million subscribers of his YouTube channel that since 1964 he's been investing in silver, but is now trading in silver and gold for Bitcoin. According to Kiyosaki, Bitcoin has more upside potential relative to the two precious metals. I'm switching as fast as I can out of gold and silver into Bitcoin because I think Bitcoin in 2025 will probably go to 250,000 a coin. Bitcoin is trading at 102 at the time of writing. The Rich Dad Poor Dad author says that the massive debt the U.S. holds, currently approximately 36, we just saw it, it's more than 36.2, it's 36.4 and a bit trillion, almost 36.5 trillion, is a bullish catalyst for Bitcoin. Absolutely it is. The reason Bitcoin is doing so well is because of my generation and the generation before. America is now the biggest debtor nation in history. They're printing $1 trillion every 90 days. And as much as I like the President Trump, who is a friend of mine, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about how they're going to handle that debt. So that's why for years I have saved silver and gold, but now I'm taking all my silver and gold and converting it to Bitcoin. Wow. Kiyosaki further says, this is the biggest change in world history, the shift from fake money to crypto, the digital money, and I'm on it as hard as I can. See if we can...
Ever since 1964, I've been saving silver. So right now I'm trading in my silver to buy more Bitcoin. Because the silver I was buying was at 10 cents an ounce. Today it's $30 an ounce. So the dollar went down, the price of silver when gold went up. So now I'm going to trade that for Bitcoin. So I want to talk about Bitcoin. It's your generations. People I'm concerned about are my generation, younger guys, because they don't know anything about it. And the reason Bitcoin is doing so well is because my generation or generation before, America is now the biggest debtor nation in history. They're printing $1 trillion every 90 days. And as much as I like President Trump, as a friend of mine, they don't talk about it. They don't.
Yeah, so he's effectively, the story we read is pretty much talking about the same thing in the video. I don't want to leave the video too long because they might say I'm, using copyrighted material, but I am loving Robert Kiyosaki, and the link to this story, of course, is going to be in the show notes if you guys want to check out the video as well. I've read a couple of his books. He is great. I like his passion. I like his story. And the Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a good story. I know I haven't listed it as one of my books of the week. It is something I've read a couple of times, and it is a good book. It's a very nice story. He more talks about taxes, and which is effectively the biggest burden on everybody. The biggest portion of your paycheck goes to taxes. It's not your house, it's not your car, it's not your mortgage, it's not your groceries, it's not everything you buy or don't buy. Even if you don't buy anything, the biggest chunk of everybody's income is coming from their taxes. And he goes big into recommending, having a corporation, paying yourself first. So effectively, his whole book in a minute is you have a corporation. As an individual, you work. Your work, before you even get your paycheck, taxes your income. So by the time you get it, you've already lost, in most cases, 25 to 50% of your income. Then on top of that, you go and you shop, and everything you buy has taxes. So an effective tax rate on most people is literally between 50 and 60 or 70% of their income. So his book, the strategy is amazing, and this is what all the real whales are doing out there. They complain that, Donald Trump didn't pay any taxes, and his response was, I've done everything legally. You guys were the ones who made the tax law. I worked within your tax law, and I paid no taxes. So Kiyosaki, Trump, and certainly smart people out there, the billionaires, the multi-billionaires, these guys, what they're doing, what the smart money is doing, and this is what Kiyosaki recommends. You have a corporation. Now, in your corporation, let's say you make $100,000. So you then buy things, and you write those things off toward your corporation. So let's say you made $100,000 in your business makes $100,000, and you then spend $100,000 on investing into your corporation, whatever it may be. Okay, I bought 2 Teslas because I need it for transporting goods, and that cost me $100,000. Well, number one, you've invested back in your business, and number two, after you've spent the $100,000 on equipment for your company, how much is left to pay taxes on? If you made $100,000 and you spent $100,000, what's left to pay taxes? How much tax do you pay on zero? Well, you pay zero tax on zero. So in that way, you then pay yourself first instead of paying yourself last. And that, if we want to sum up his book in, just 1 or 2 minutes, the normal folk, they'll work for the man, they get taxed first, and then they get paid. The corporation pays himself first, and then they get taxed. So it gives them an opportunity to spend all the money they made before they get taxed. And if you spend all the money you made, how much is left to tax? Zero. So brilliant. And this is what the whales are doing, guys. Make no mistake. Even if they have some kind of company that's a front as a company, just to help wash this money. This is what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything illegal. If they're washing money and they're really not making any cash, they're gonna. If it's a fake company, the government's gonna catch up to them. Like, you can't have a bullshit company. It's got to be real. It's got to be legit. But they certainly find ways to pay themselves first, and the working schmo pays himself last. So I like what he presented in his books, and I really like what he's doing now, selling his silver and gold and buying the biddy. Brilliant. Good for him. He didn't really talk well about Bitcoin, but he's been orange pilled recently. Trump was the same. Effectively, everybody was the same. Michael Saylor was the same. Max Kaiser was telling him to buy Bitcoin in 2012, I think it was, and he told him he was crazy. And what happened? He ended up buying, MicroStrategy started buying Bitcoin in 2020. So, you get your Bitcoin at the price you deserve, effectively, is the saying. If you keep bad-mouthing it and waiting around, then you're going to buy it at $1 million. If you get in early, you get it at the price you deserve. Right now, it's at 100 grand. A year ago, it was at 30 grand. Before that, you could pick it up for 12, 14 grand. So, play it smart, dollar cost average. That way you save yourself, and get yourself some biddy, even if you start with 10, 20 bucks. Get things started, figure out how it works, and your little portfolio should grow over time, and make yourself happy without making a big dent on your life. Remember, folks, we're always talking about money here, and remember that money is abundant and money is everywhere. It's time that's scarce, so spend your time wisely. Spend less money than you earn, and if you suddenly start to make more money, save more money. Don't go spending more money, and start saving when you're young. Start when you're 16, start when you're 20, and hopefully you can retire when you're 40 in your prime. Still have time to travel, do the things you love, be fit. If you start late, you're going to retire late. So start early, retire early. And if you've got a great idea, speaking of the corporation, start your idea today. Start it small. You don't have to have all the pieces in place before you start. But the thing is, start today, because if you keep contemplating on how am I going to do this and let's get it perfect, and it's never going to be perfect. But if you start today, you'll make all these little minor mistakes, and it'll get to where you want it to go shortly. All that work will finally pay off. I equate it to a construction worker on the street using a jackhammer. Well, they've got this jackhammer, and you're watching them, break the cement, and you see he's there, and it hits the pavement 200 times, not even a scratch. But on the 201st, the pavement splits in half. So, do you really think that it was the 201st shock to the ground that split it in half? No, it was the accumulation of the 200 strikes before that, and finally that last one was the kicker. So it's the same thing with a great idea. You put in the time now, you might be disappointed at first, but at some point all your hard work is suddenly going to explode into this amazing company, and it'll happen fast, and it won't be because you did it all in one day. It'll be because you put in work over the months, over the years, and all that hard work will eventually pay off for you. Hopefully you found this stream enjoyable, guys. Please, if you did, share, like, comment, and subscribe, and we shall see you on the next stream. Thanks so much for joining Crypto News Global. Have a good night.